The story started with a sound. Not music. The sound of the ice machine down the hall at the Berkshire Grand. A deep hum from the compressor, then a click, then the loud, clattering crash of falling ice. It sounded like it was happening right inside my head. It was driving me crazy. It was too loud, too sterile, too cheap for a hotel charging $600 a night. I sat on the edge of the bed, wrapped tightly in the robe with the hotel logo stitched on it. The air conditioner was blasting freezing air that smelled like bleach and dust. Liam was asleep. He was flat on his back, arms thrown wide, breathing evenly. He slept like a man with no secrets. Or at least, a man who knew how to ignore them. I stared at his hand, resting on the bright white, crunchy hotel sheet. There was dirt packed under his nails. Contractor's dirt, the kind you can never really scrub out. That dirt had seemed so real to me just a few hours ago. It felt more alive than anything in our sterile house in Wellesley. Now, in this cold hotel light, it just looked dirty. And I thought, had I really driven 3 hours down the Mass Pike, risking absolutely everything I had, just for this? For the smell of bleach and that stubborn dirt? For a man who just listened to me? My phone vibrated on the nightstand. It was sitting next to a nearly empty glass of white wine. Not the other phone, the burner phone I used for Liam, but my real one. The one tied to our family plan. The screen lit up, and his name flashed. Tom. Just 3 letters. My heart didn't just drop. It fell right through my stomach and landed in some cold, empty space. That was it. He knows. The thought wasn't a guess. It was a fact. He'd tracked me. He was downstairs in the lobby right now, showing the front desk clerk our Christmas card. He was coming up. He would use his own key, the one he'd definitely get from the manager. Because Tom always took control. He would smile and say he decided to surprise me. I stopped breathing. The phone vibrated again. Insistent. Like a siren. I hit decline. My hands were shaking. A text message popped up immediately. He told me to pick up the phone. It was urgent. And, he wrote, it was good news. Good news. That was worse. That was his signature torture. The slow, cruel game. I slipped into the bathroom, closing the heavy door so I wouldn't wake Liam. The marble floor was ice cold against my bare feet. I hit redial. A single ring, and then his voice exploded into my ear. He wasn't angry. He wasn't sarcastic. He was manic. Elated. He was shouting, calling me baby, calling me Jenny. His voice was loud, full of some kind of drunken, wild happiness. He yelled that the deal he'd been working on for the last year had just closed. The big one. I leaned my forehead against the cold mirror, trying to make my voice sound happy. I whispered that it was incredible, Tom. Just incredible. He wasn't listening. He was rattling on, saying we were rich. No, he corrected himself, he used this exact word, we were really rich. Boston rich. Beacon Hill townhouse rich, not just a nice suburb rich. I mumbled that I was so happy for him. For us. That he deserved it. And then his tone shifted. His voice got quiet, intimate. He said he knew I'd been tired lately. He knew he'd been buried in his numbers, in this project. But he wanted me to know that he saw everything. He appreciated everything. He told me, right now, this second, to check my account. My heart stopped again. What account? He told me to check my personal account. That one. And then he said it. He told me to check my Black Day fund. The cold crawled up my back, up from my feet on the marble floor. I couldn't feel my fingers. Black Day fund. I had never, ever said that name out loud. Not to him. Not to anyone. It was my own private, bitter joke. My darkest secret. In my banking app, that account was labeled Jay's Escape. I'd opened it 6 months ago, when I first realized I couldn't breathe around him anymore. How? How in the hell did he know the phrase I had only ever said inside my own head? I could hear Liam mumble something in his sleep in the next room, rolling over. Tom was saying something about a celebration, about the champagne he already had on ice. I didn't hear a word. I opened my banking app. My thumb kept slipping on the fingerprint scanner. Account balance, Jay's Escape. Incoming transfer, pending, $100,000. It wasn't a gift. It wasn't generosity. It was a message. He knows. I walked out of the bathroom, clutching the robe. Liam mumbled something in his sleep and rolled over. $100,000. Black Day Fund. The phrase was just echoing in my skull, louder than that ice machine. He knows. That single thought cancelled out all the adrenaline from the affair, all the thrill of the escape. All that was left was this sticky, cold fear. I looked at Liam, asleep. Was it for this? No. I wasn't here for him. I was here to get away from Tom. I need to make one thing clear. Tom wasn't a bad husband. He wasn't cold, or cruel, or distant. He was the exact opposite. Tom was, too much. He was a wildfire. He loved loudly, in public, like a 4th of July fireworks show. He adored me so much that I couldn't breathe. Our life in Wellesley was his project. My life was his project. He was Mr. Celebration, Mr. Grand Gesture. When he walked into a room, he just filled it up with his laugh, his booming energy. Everybody loved him. I did, too. For the first 10 years. And then I started to suffocate. I thought about our kitchen. A year ago, he decided to give me a present. A complete remodel. He picked out the marble himself. Calacatta gold. Huge, fat, ugly gold veins all over it. I hated it. It was gaudy. It looked like the lobby of a Las Vegas casino. I remember standing there, in the middle of all the construction dust, and I gently said that maybe this stone was a little loud. Tom just laughed. He pulled me into one of those hugs that practically cracked your ribs and kissed the top of my head. He said it was the best, baby. Only the best for his girl. He didn't listen. He never listened. He only heard the sound of his own excitement. He controlled everything. Not like a tyrant, but like an overeager camp counselor. He rebalanced our investments. He picked where we went on vacation. He even helped with my little design studio, giving me advice on which clients to take. He called it taking care of me. I called it smothering. He didn't leave me any air, any room to just be me. I wasn't Jenna. I was Tom's wife. The perfect wife for the perfect Tom. And then Liam showed up. He was the contractor Tom had hired to install that awful marble. Liam was quiet. He was the complete opposite of Tom. He didn't laugh. He barely spoke. He just worked. I was standing in the kitchen one day, just watching him and his crew fit the countertop. I must have sighed. Liam stopped for a second and just looked at me. No smile. He just looked. His hands were covered in white stone dust. He quietly asked if I didn't like it. I mumbled something about it being fine. But he just shook his head and said that, yeah, it was loud. He said I seemed more like a Carrara person. Something soft, with veins like smoke. I almost started crying. Right there, in my own kitchen. He saw me. Not Tom's wife. Just me. Our affair didn't start with sex. It started a week later, over coffee in his pickup truck. The truck smelled like sawdust and gasoline and cheap tobacco. It started with him asking me questions about wood grains. He listened. He nodded. He didn't try to fix me or turn me into his next big project. Next to him, I could just breathe. I looked at Liam, sleeping in the hotel bed. He was my oxygen. My secret tank of air. But now it was all poisoned. $100,000. Black Day Fund. He knows. I just sat there, frozen. What was I supposed to do? Run? Go home and confess? It was right then that Liam woke up. He smiled at me, still half asleep. And then my phone, which I was still clutching in my cold hand, just exploded. It wasn't a call. It was a series of fast, angry vibrations. Buzz buzz buzz. Notifications. I looked at the screen. CNN. The Boston Globe. Channel 5 News. All the headlines were screaming the same thing. A massive fire in an office building. Downtown, in the Seaport District. I knew that building. Tom had a meeting there today. I knew it, because he had put it on our shared Google Calendar 2 days ago. My fingers were shaking. I called his number. It went straight to voicemail. The phone was off. Not just bad service. It was turned off. I tried his office line. No answer. Just ringing, and ringing, and ringing. Horror. Just pure, icy horror. It was worse than the fear of being caught. $100,000. Black Day Fund. Oh, God. It wasn't, I know. It was, goodbye. It was my karma, and it had arrived instantly. I gripped the bathroom counter. The cold marble, in this hotel, felt like it was pulling all the heat right out of me. Tom. The fire. The dead phone. And the $100,000. A single thought, stupid and childish and superstitious, hammered in my brain. I had killed him. I had traded his life for 3 hours in a cheap hotel room with another man. This was not just karma. This was a deal I had made, and I had not bothered to read the fine print. I burst out of the bathroom. Liam sat up in bed, blinking in the sudden light. He asked what was wrong, why I was white as a sheet. I could not form a sentence. I just spat out the words. Fire. The office. Seaport. The phone. He is not answering. I started scrambling around the room, shoving my things into my bag. My designer sweater, the one I had tossed on the chair, suddenly looked ridiculous. Where were my car keys? All I could see were Liam's, dirty work boots, kicked off by the door. Everything in the room suddenly felt disgusting. Liam jumped out of bed. He grabbed my shoulders. Hard. It almost hurt. He told me to stop. I tried to twist away, yelling that he did not understand, that I had to go, I had to get home right now. And that is when he said it. He was not comforting me. He was angry. He told me to calm down. He said I was going crazy. He asked if I was even sure Tom was at the office. It was Saturday. He asked if I really trusted the news. They always blow things up, he said, just to scare people. He was talking logically. He was making sense. And every single word felt like a slap in the face. I stared at him, trying to catch my breath. I whispered that he did not get it. His phone was off. Liam let me go. He ran a hand through his hair. His eyes were not filled with sympathy. They were filled with fear. But not for me. And not for Tom. He said that I was going to ruin everything. That is what he was worried about. He said I was going to drive home right now, a total hysterical mess. And Tom would be sitting right there on the couch, perfectly fine, drinking one of his stupid craft beers. And he would look at me, tear-streaked, still in the same clothes I supposedly flew to Chicago in. And he would know. He asked me if I had even thought about that. I just looked at him. At his face. At the dirt under his nails. At his scared, selfish eyes. The quiet one. The real one. The man who saw me. All the passion, all the fog I had built up around him, it just evaporated in 1 second. He was not my savior. He was just my mistake. He was my own reflection. Just as weak, just as selfish. I thought he was my oxygen, but he was just an escape hatch. I realized I did not love him. I never had. I loved the idea of running away. I had used him, just to prove to myself that I was still alive. To secretly hurt Tom, who had dared to not hear me. And now, in this moment when Tom might actually be dead, when I was facing a real, permanent loss, this real man was only worried that our grubby little secret would get out. I shoved him. Hard. I told him to let me go. That I was going home. He tried to say something else, to grab my arm. But I was already at the door. I ran out into the hall, right past that same ice machine, still humming, still churning. The 3-hour drive down the Mass Pike felt like forever. It had started to rain. A cold, miserable drizzle. The windshield wipers were on high, and their thwack 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 against the glass sounded like a judgment. Fool. 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 I was not thinking about Liam anymore. I was only thinking about Tom. About his loud laugh. About how he always picked the wrong thing for me, but how he did it with such honest, suffocating love. That love I had run away from now seemed like the only real thing in the world. And I had traded it for a man who was scared. I rehearsed the confession. Over and over again in my head. I would fly into the house. I would fall on my knees. I would tell him everything. About Liam. About the bank account. I would give him back the $100,000, every last cent. I would beg. I would do whatever he said. If only he was alive. If only he was there so I could tell him how wrong I had been. I jumped out of the car. I did not even turn off the engine. The door slammed shut, and the car just sat there humming in the driveway, its headlights cutting into the perfectly manicured lawn. I stumbled running into the house, fumbling with the key in the lock. The house was quiet. Empty. No. Not empty. It was clean. Perfectly clean. The entryway did not smell like us, like our life, like dust or the dog. It smelled like lemons. A sharp, chemical cleaning spray smell. It felt like someone had disinfected the place. As if our house was not a home, but a crime scene where all the evidence had been wiped away. I dropped my wet bag onto the floor. Water pooled on the perfect hardwood. I walked to the kitchen. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I could hear it echoing off the walls. And there he was. Sitting at the kitchen island. Alive. Unharmed. Not covered in soot or burns. He was wearing a perfect, crisp, white polo shirt. He was calmly sipping coffee from his favorite mug. That awful, gaudy Calacatta gold marble I hated was gleaming under the spotlights, reflecting his calm face. He was alive. The relief was so powerful, so absolute, that my knees just gave out. I collapsed, right there at the entrance to the kitchen. It was not really crying. It was a raw, choking sound that ripped out of my chest. I think I actually crawled toward him, my hands sliding on the tile. I touched his knee. He was warm. He was real. I started babbling. I said his name. I said, thank God. I said I saw the news, the fire in Seaport, his office, that his phone was off. I thought he was. I thought. I told him I had to tell him something. That I was so sorry, just so incredibly sorry. I started my confession. I said I. And that is when he cut me off. He did not raise his voice. He did not yell. He just spoke. He slowly, very slowly, put his coffee mug down on the marble countertop. The sound of the ceramic touching the stone, that click, was the only sound in the sterile quiet. It sounded as loud as a gunshot. He looked down at me. I was still on the floor at his feet, sobbing. And I saw his eyes. They were not Tom's eyes. Not my passionate, loud, excitable husband's eyes. There was no fire in them. No anger. Not even any pain. There was nothing. It was the look of a biologist studying a specimen under a microscope. Cold. Curious. Completely blank. He asked me what, exactly, I needed to tell him, Jenna. His voice was quiet. Even. He asked if I wanted to tell him that I was not in Chicago. That I was not at a design conference. He asked if I wanted to tell him that I was, in fact, at the Berkshire Grand Hotel. In room 412. He asked if I wanted to tell him about Liam Haynes. He asked if I wanted to tell him about the $4,200 I transferred from our joint family account last month. He said he had checked. It was for Liam's van repair. He leaned down toward me, still on my knees. He asked if I wanted to tell him about my secret bank account. The one I opened 6 months ago. The one I called Jay's Escape. Jay's Escape. Not Black Day Fund. He knew both names. He knew the one I'd said out loud, and the one I'd hidden inside my own head. I could not breathe. I just whispered one word. How? And then he smiled. No, it was not a smile. It was a tiny, cold muscle spasm at the corner of his mouth. He said I always thought he was a venture capitalist. He said that always amused him. He explained that his real job was forensic accounting. He said he does not invest in companies. He guts them. He is the person billionaires hire when they are getting divorced and trying to hide assets. He is the one who finds the fraud where everyone else just sees numbers. He said I always thought he was a wildfire, impulsive and passionate. But he was, as he put it, actually just a spreadsheet. He asked if I seriously thought he would not notice a new bank account opened in my name. If I thought he would not notice a second cell phone, purchased on our joint Amazon account. He said I had only archived the order. I had not deleted it. He called it an amateur mistake. He paused, letting that sink in. And then he added that it was not the phone that tipped him off. It was not even the bank account. He said it was the thermostat. I did not understand. What thermostat? He reminded me that he hates the cold. He always sets the heat to 72 degrees. But our smart Nest thermostat, he explained, had recorded 3 separate instances over the last 2 months when someone had manually turned the temperature down to 68 degrees. Always on a Tuesday. Always for exactly 2 hours. It was always at a time when he was not home, and I was supposedly at my studio. He said he could not figure out why I would do that. And then he simply matched the timestamps from the thermostat to the data from their front door camera. They matched perfectly with the arrival and departure of Liam Haynes's pickup truck. He finished, looking right through me. He said he does not look for emotions. He looks for patterns. And my pattern, he said, was desperately predictable. I was still looking up at him from the floor. From my knees. This man I had called predictable had just explained that I was not just an unfaithful wife. I was a predictable pattern. My numb brain could only grab onto one detail, one last thread in this ice-cold web. I whispered, still unable to stand, about the $100,000. The deal. His excited, celebratory phone call. Tom smirked. It was a dry, joyless sound. He said he was glad I asked about that. He walked over to the kitchen counter and picked up a thick blue folder. The exact blue of my design studio's logo. He did not hand it to me. He tossed it onto the clean tile floor. Right in front of me. He said the $100,000 was not a gift. It was a legal trap. He asked if I seriously thought that was his money. He gave a short, quiet laugh. It was my money. From my Jay's Escape account. He explained it. He had found that account 6 months ago, right after I made the first transfer. He did not block it. He did not say a word. He just waited. He watched as I, like a little thieving mouse, funneled money from the family budget into it. And this morning, when the private investigator confirmed I had checked into the Berkshire Grand with Liam, he simply transferred the entire amount from my secret account into our joint account. 5 minutes later, he gifted it right back to me. He called it a controlled transaction. He needed me to accept the money. He needed me to take it while I was physically with my lover. He called it dissipation of marital assets, combined with moral turpitude. He said no judge in Massachusetts would ever side with me. I had not just cheated. I had stolen from the family, and then accepted the stolen money as a gift to cover my tracks. I suddenly remembered. My brain was desperate for a lifeline. I asked about the fire. His office in Seaport. His phone being off. That was real. My fear had been real. Tom frowned, looking genuinely confused about what I was talking about. And then it dawned on him. He said, "Oh, the fire. Yes, that was a terrible tragedy. But his meeting was yesterday. He just forgot to update the shared Google Calendar. And the phone? He said he had turned it off himself. Because he was not in Seaport. He was downtown, at his lawyer's office. He was signing the emergency motion to freeze all my assets. My panicked call had come through right at the exact moment the judge was signing the order. So that was it. My grand repentance, my fear, my desperate race down the highway in the rain. It was all based on a scheduling error. He told me to get out. He said the blue folder held the divorce settlement. I could keep my studio. But I would not get the house, I would not get alimony, and I would not get 1 cent of his money. I finally pushed myself up off the floor. My legs were shaking. I had always been afraid that Tom was a wildfire who would suffocate me. I was wrong. He was ice. And he had just been waiting for me to slip. The phone in my pocket vibrated again. It was Liam. He was asking if I made it home. If I was okay. I looked at the text message. Then I looked at the blue folder on the floor. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly, genuinely cold. And that's the whole story. If you enjoyed this story and want to keep hearing more just like it, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so you do not miss any new episodes. Remember, your support is so important to help this channel keep growing. So, what do you think? We just heard a story about betrayal. But who is the real villain here? Was it Jenna, who was looking for warmth somewhere else because she felt trapped in a golden cage, suffocated by a perfect love? Or was it Tom? Instead of facing the problem, or talking, or just leaving, he turned his pain into a cold, 6-month audit. He clearly enjoyed the calculated, total destruction of his wife. Was Tom's revenge an appropriate response to being cheated on? Or was this a sophisticated, cruel kind of psychological abuse that he planned from start to finish? And here is the biggest question: did Jenna deserve to lose everything, not just her home, but her own savings, all for her mistake? Or, in the end, did she just run into an opponent who turned out to be much, much smarter, and far more ruthless than she ever imagined?